Thank you, Laurence, and thank you to everybody for taking the time out of your busy day or busy lunch times to join our presentation. This is our first webinar, so bear with us. We think we've got everything figured out, and our goal is to really help you understand our tagline here, what it means to be fueling the drive to hydrogen. We're pretty excited about it. There's lots going on, and I'm gonna take you through what we do, what we're all about, and provide the information on the investment opportunity that I think you're all looking for and interested in. So without further ado, I will take some pauses. I want to make sure everybody's loads up with the next slide. So HTEC's mission is, as it says, we really want to help unlock hydrogen's potential to reduce climate change as well as urban pollution, particularly in areas like China, even San Francisco. Another way we say that is, you know, we're super excited about hydrogen and we want everybody to start driving hydrogen vehicles. That's kind of our internal way of saying things. So what we actually do is fairly straightforward. We're a globally recognized leader in hydrogen supply solutions. So we develop, we design, we build, and we operate three different things: hydrogen production facilities, hydrogen distribution systems, and hydrogen fueling stations. There's a couple pictures on the right-hand side of the type of equipment that we're dealing with, the type of systems that we operate, we own, and build. So we have operations in California, British Columbia, starting to do stuff in Eastern Canada. So I'm going to dive into really the market opportunity and why hydrogen has massive potential to help in the climate change and urban air pollutions around the world. So this slide has a lot of information. It's put together by the Hydrogen Council, but on the top page is really the 7 areas that hydrogen can help out in. Most people think about really the transportation of the vehicles, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. So work with me here. So number 1, the top hexagon there, is really about enabling renewable energies, which is primarily solar and wind. And everyone knows that the sun and the wind never comes out when you want it to. So as you use more and more of this, you have real balancing problems. And by taking that electricity and changing it into hydrogen, you have a really big storage system to enable that hydrogen to be used for other applications as we move across. So people are actually shipping renewable energies around the world, or they're starting to look at it using hydrogen. So you can take it from British Columbia, ship it over to Japan, as well as create a large buffer for these alternative fuels, or alternative energy supplies. On the right-hand side, so 4, 5, 6, and 7 are really the end uses that you can decarbonize. So as we talked about, it's transportation. I will talk about that a little further in the next slide. You can also reduce the industrial hydrogen. Hydrogen is used in a number of different places, from fertilizer manufacturing to steel manufacturing, chip manufacturing. So we can start to decarbonize that by linking it to the renewable energy sector. Then there's the building power. So we're starting to put hydrogen into natural gas and reducing the carbon intensity of the hydrogen that flows into your heating system. And then we can also use it as a feedstock for numerous other chemicals or fuels. So the Hydrogen Council is made up of the likes of Toyota and Shell, and they have tried to estimate the impact that hydrogen can have. So you take a look at these numbers at the bottom, they're pretty large. 18% of final energy demand globally, that's 6 gigatons of the annual CO2 abatement. Massive amounts of investment and opportunities in hydrogen equipment sales, and then 30 million jobs. So pretty important for countries around the world to look at this very, very closely. So that gives the real grand picture of what hydrogen is all about and the opportunity. Going back to one of the segments that's really leading is the transportation of this sector. So the big driver here is about zero emissions at the tailpipe. So you sort of plug that GHG leakage, you might call it, and it opens up all the other opportunities that we just talked about. And then there's the fast fueling. So the battery electric cars are great, and we don't like to diss those in any way, shape, or form, but there's a lot of, the market really needs that convenience of being able to fill up in 5 minutes at a gas station, go the 600, 700 kilometers that they do today. So That's on the consumer side, as well as on the trucking side and the bus side. Even trains. There's a trains that started in Europe this week, taking advantage of these two main factors of hydrogen on the vehicle itself. So I encourage you guys to do research. There's obviously lots of different opinions out there, but I think you'll find that there's really a growing number of activities around the world that reinforce what I've just presented here. So from the likes of Toyota ramping up production to companies in the US securing funding to build the trucks. So it's pretty exciting. And I do encourage you guys to really research into that and understand the opportunity as we see it. So bringing it just a little bit closer to home, we've been very involved in California for the last couple of years, and this gives an idea how markets are going to evolve around the world. So a zero-emission vehicle mandate, and that can be for cars or trucks or buses, and as well as government support for the early stage really drives adoption. So there's 5,000 cars on the road, a variety of the ones that you see on the right-hand side here. And there's 60 stations open or in construction. And really their goal, first goal is for the 2025, where they want 200 stations and 40,000 vehicles. Big step in the right direction, and that will enable their vision for 2030, which you can see is really very large, 1 million fuel cell vehicles and 1,000 stations. And that's where HTEC's opportunity comes in, is building that infrastructure and then the fuel sales or the servicing of the stations. So very good example. We're very tied into California to help understand a leading sector. And this is starting to play out similarly in Canada, where our big part of our focus is. So pretty exciting. In Quebec, they have the zero-emission vehicle mandate in place. They have funding in place, and things are really starting to ramp up with Toyota bringing cars at the end of this year. We're involved in stations out there and partner development at this stage. Ontario is a big market. It's very important to the whole auto sector. So there's a lot of discussions going on as how do we progress in that area. And I think what will happen is they'll take a little while to get going, but then they'll move very, very quickly. So our positioning is really helping out in that area. Back home in British Columbia, the support for hydrogen has been around for quite a few years with Ballard and ourselves and a number of other companies. There's actually 2,000 jobs in British Columbia already in the sector. And there's also a number of funding programs that have enabled us to take our leadership position and build the network. But what's really exciting is just last month, the British Columbia government tabled a zero-emission vehicle mandate, and that's really going to drive the load of vehicles to our stations. So before I get into a couple of the infrastructure we're building in BC, I'm just going to touch on the competitive advantages that HTEC has. So we've been at it for a while. We started back in the hydrogen highway days. So we were involved in pretty much all the projects, very involved in the hydrogen buses that went to Whistler. So a lot of understanding got created in those years of project development, project building permits, and the technologies. So we've got that. We've managed to get Shell, which is one of the most safety conscious companies in the world, to certify our engineering practices and procedures and operations. So we've managed to develop a great partner base, and we'll list those in a few minutes here. One of the key advantages, obviously, is the first mover as well as the locals advantage in British Columbia and Quebec, and a very good history with the Canadian government over a decade. And on top of that, we really do have an agile and passionate cultures. We're excited to do what we're doing. We come up with ideas daily that we need to manage and bring to our clients. So this is our list of partners. As you can see, some of these companies are what's leading the Hydrogen Council. They're major players. They're really looking at the impact of hydrogen and how it becomes material for them in not that many years. For Toyota, for Hyundai, and we have very long-standing relationships with a number of these, and their clients, their partners, a combination of both. So, and there's a lot of the value I think we've developed over the decade. So, British Columbia. We're from British Columbia. We've got a great lead here. It took a couple years, but we managed to bring together $23 million. This is from a combination of grants, sponsorships, what's called low carbon fuel credits, and we're building the first network in Canada. So the first station we'll show you in the next slide is open. But as we build it out over the next about 18 months to 24 months, we will have 6 pay-at-the-pump dispensers. So you're going to drive up to existing gas stations, be able to go over to Victoria, and this will be all supplied by a low greenhouse gas electrolysis system that we're sort of a central production that we're filling, or sorry, that we're building. So about 1,000 cars is what this is built for, and we're working with the car companies to really ramp that up starting next year once we validate our stations, and the second one coming online in the first quarter of next year will really begin that ramp up. And I think people will start to see them around town like you do some of the other electric vehicles. So this is a great day for HTEC. It took quite a few years, but back in June, we opened the first station with Shell. So this is really in partnership with Shell. We're doing 3 stations with Shell. So the next one will be opening up on a Shell site out in Burnaby, and as well as I think it's the 4th station. So great partner, and they all came out and helped us with this grand opening. And anyone on the line, go down to the station, take a look at it. It's open to the public. We can coordinate a fill if you're really quite interested, and you can see the vehicle that Hyundai gave us to drive around and promote things. So with all this opportunity, we have developed some growth plans for ourselves, for HTEC. We feel the timing is now. I know we've been at it for a while, but waiting for the industry, waiting for our expertise to develop, and we feel we're ready to move forward on an aggressive growth plan. So this lays it out, you can see, and but really it's not pie in the sky. We have 18 million in revenue secured for the next 18 months. And see lots of opportunity, and this is why we're doing the equity funding, to really keep up with the demand that we're seeing. So that is sort of the fundamental of what we're going to do with the equity funds. These are some of the details, but we need to build that internal capacity to keep up with the demands we're getting globally, as well as more and more in Canada, down in the US as well. So we've got a lot of great people, but we need to expand that pool. We need to really also take advantage of some of the technologies we see and dream up to improve our competitive advantage in the area that we're working. There's also continued partner development. We're getting more interest from partners now that we have talked about our Shell relationship publicly, and some with Toyota, and working capital. It is with the fast growth, we need to balance our working capital. So that kind of wraps things up for what we're about, and what we're offering is the investment opportunities. So we've been pretty excited. We've been doing the crowdfunding for about a week now, and it's been great just engaging with investors across the country that are excited about what we're doing as much as we are. So we've got a target of raising $1 million, about 60% of the way there, and we feel we have a pretty competitive pre-money valuation, and set the investment fairly low because we want people engaged. We want champions across the country, and to really allow people to be part of what we're doing. If you're in BC, it's actually a pretty good deal. You get 30% back from the government on your 2018 tax return. Put an RSP if you want, or TFSA, and the exit for this, we think in 4 to 6 years, the market is really going to be red hot. We'll be well positioned, created a lot of value between now and then. It'll be time for either a strategic sale or an IPO, and we're keeping both options open and starting to think in that nature for that time period. So I think in summary, there's a question, why invest in HTEC? We recognize everybody has other options, but we do feel it's a multi-billion-dollar market just around the corner. We're a first mover, and we have some monopoly positions in key areas such as British Columbia. We have a leading position in Quebec. We have revenue secured, multinational customers and partners, and proven growth over the last couple of years, management of that and securing it. So we hope you guys are interested in joining us. We have some time for questions and answers to go back over slides as needed, and I'll sign off there. And my understanding, Lawrence will come back online and try and take some of the questions that are coming in.
I'm here. So if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button in the Zoom windows, and you can also ask questions directly on the chat, so don't hesitate. And we have one here. So Colin, you talked about your work with California. Could you tell us a little bit more what your experience there teaches you, what's the market in the US, and how we can learn from your experience there to apply in Canada here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got into California about 3 years ago, really when they decided it was time to move to the commercial scale up of their network. They'd done a number of preliminary stations, and now it was time to go commercial. So one of the things we really learned was that evolution from the how the government had to manage their funding and the support of it, how the authorities having jurisdiction reacted to it, as well as the clients, the car companies. So we're seeing that play out in the other markets as well. So to sort of have seen it once, we're advising the governments, we're advising the local car companies that what they need to do to embrace the technology. So that's a great area. We've also managed to develop partnerships to understand what the forefront of this technology is and how we position ourselves, and got some great dialogue going on you know, competitors / partners in that marketplace.
So you're still doing business in California with those partners?
Sorry, say that again?
You're still doing business with those partners, or you're using
yes, we have a station down in California, and we're using it to really develop partnerships to help us tackle the California market.
Okay, and you talked about the expansion in BC. Do you have any plan for expansion in Alberta or any other provinces?
Yeah, so our key focus right now is Quebec, as we have contracts out there to support it, but we are in the middle of developing a partnership to really expand into the Quebec market, and that's driven by the funding they have as well as the zero-emission vehicle mandate.
Okay, good. We have another question. So revenue was 1.8 million in 2017. What strategy in 2018 was implemented to those revenue to 5 million in 2018?
Sorry, what was the question? I didn't quite hear the.
So you had a big revenue growth between 2017 and 18. What strategy did you implement to justify this revenue growth?
Okay, so yeah, the growth came from a number of different contracts, some technical services contracts, engineering style, as well as the building of our network in Vancouver. So the growth was, it took a while to line up all these contracts. Then it was a matter of executing. So we put together a very strong engineering team and project management team, as well as developed our internal risk management systems, quality systems, financial systems. So that's a big part of what we've been focusing on to manage this growth. And we feel we have a very solid foundation for that right now.
Good, I hope it answers your question. And so how, can you tell us a little bit more about your competitor in Canada and in the US?
Our partners in the? Your competitor.
Competitors.
Oh, our competitors, sorry, yes. Yeah, so competitors are in California. You have some smaller groups like ourselves, and you have the bigger companies like Shell moving in. And there's a surprising amount of partnering going on. There's lots of elements to this building of the infrastructure. So we're partnering with some of the industrial gas companies. Air Liquide is one of them. They typically supply nitrogens and oxygens and hydrogen, but they're moving into this sector as well. So we have a good relationship with them. They like to work with smaller companies as well. Same with Shell. They like to work with small companies. So there's competition, but there's lots of opportunities for partnership as well. We don't see too many competitors in Canada, which is one of the reasons we're focused on it and taking that leading position. I think we've kept a few out. Obviously, they're going to materialize. We don't want to be doing this alone. And then globally, there's a number of different players and a surprising number of local focuses to the companies.
Good. We have two new questions. So Priscilla is asking, you showed FCEV projection for California. What about BC? What is the production technology for fueling the Shell station? And what it is cost comparison to low emission renewable energy electrolysis?
I'm not sure if I understood the total question, but it was about the technology at the Shell station.
There's yeah, and David asked the same. How can a steady supply of hydrogen be assured in BC? So two questions about how we work with Shell and assure a steady supply.
Yes. Okay. Good question. So so HTEC is responsible for the servicing of the equipment. So our goal is to keep it up and open at all the Shell stations and all 6 of the stations that we're building. So our technical team and our maintenance team is expanding as we bring more stations online. The technology itself is in the BC network is with a Vancouver company that we partnered called PowerTech Labs. And so we have kind of co-developed that technology to improve the energy efficiency of it, improve the uptime of it. So the hydrogen supply side of it, as I say, right now we have a couple supply options and we're building our own central facility in about 20 to 24 months, that'll be up and operating. So we do need the dual supply of hydrogen, with our key one being the low carbon hydroelectric using electrolysis to produce the hydrogen.
Good. David, Priscilla, I hope it answered a part of the question. And the other part of the question was, you showed the FCEV projection for California. What about BC?
Okay. So the projections for BC and for Quebec are really in the formative stages. So you kind of have to have the infrastructure before the car companies can develop their plans. So we've been working closely with those, and we really expect an announcement of the rollout in when we open our second station up. They want to make sure the infrastructure is real here, that the local government, the local community is committed to the technology, and there's a market for them. So those numbers will come out. We've made the infrastructure enough for 1,000 cars. We don't know if that, that could be a 2-year ramp up, or it could be a 3, or it could be a 4-year ramp up. California, it was about a 1-year ramp up to that number, and they got to the 5,000 in about 3 years. So I know it's a bigger market than British Columbia, but that's all being discussed and strategized with the provincial government as well as the car companies.
Thank you. And the last part of the question was, what is the cost comparison to low emission renewable energy? So in terms of dollar per kilogram.
Yeah, so the price you'll see at the pump is on a kilogram basis. But really on a distance basis, we're actually the same as a gasoline car. So to go 100 kilometers, it'll cost you about $10. So that right now is set because of the support around it. But we feel in the long run it'll be very comparable, if not cheaper. But right now, because it's lower volume, you do need the support from governments. But for the consumer, really it's set so that that's the same price for an equivalent type of gasoline car.
Good, thank you. I hope it answered all the questions. And can you tell us a little bit more about your exit strategy? So you said around 4 to 6 years, either acquisition or IPO. What kind of acquisition are you thinking about?
Yeah, so fundamentally, it kind of goes back to that question of competition. So all the energy companies are starting to be interested. So Shells and Exxons, and then you've also got the industrial gas companies, like I mentioned. There's 5 big ones. A big part of their strategy of growth has been to buy up smaller distributors, which effectively we are as a HTEC. So we see, you know, we could sell a network to Shell, or we could sell the whole company. They're both interested in acquiring the companies that have taken leading positions in markets, such as ourselves. Or you could argue that the market will be really in the public's eye, maybe the way Tesla is today, that it make more sense for us to stay independent and go the IPO route.
Good, thank you. Do we have more questions from our viewer? Don't hesitate to ask any question about the investment opportunity or the hydrogen industry. We have the leader of the industry with us today. So we have another question here. So how will HTEC manage the capital-intensive nature of developing refueling infrastructure over the next few years?
Sorry, could you just repeat that?
Yeah. So how will HTEC manage the capital-intensive nature of developing refueling infrastructure over the next few years?
How will we capture the incentive for
the capital nature?
Oh, the capital nature, yes. Okay, so it's a good question. It is, you know, it is a capital-intensive business. A big part of our business model is really to be paid to build and operate these networks before the cars are material. So our business is not right now generating revenue or large amounts of revenue from the sale of the hydrogen. It's really providing that capacity. You know, Don Romano, the head of Hyundai Canada, sort of said, look, you know, build it and they will come. So we are doing what he said, but we've had to structure our business to make sure there's grants, there's government credit programs to pay for that capital. We see that going forward, and we'll focus on markets where that is. Once that's not needed, then there's these projects become bankable, and as the sector matures, as HTEC matures, there'll be a bankability to the various projects to access, whether it's green bonds or regular financing from the banks.